I'm now really pleased to introduce Professor Richard Bourne to welcome everyone formally. And as well as being a specialist in theology and ethics, Richard is Pro-Vice-Chancellor at York St John for Learning and Teaching, and he's also a trustee of York City of Sanctuary. So Richard, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. Well, good morning and welcome to Converge Evaluated Findings and Responses. Converge was founded in 2008 at York St John in close partnership with the Tees, Esk and Wear Valley NHS Foundation Trust. Since 2016, it is also run at Northumbria University in Newcastle, and it offers free educational courses to local adults with experiences of mental health challenges. Working through a long-standing partnership, the Converge model's whole-person approach to well-being has had an enormous impact, and I know many of you will have that impact in mind today as you go through the various sessions that you'll be discussing for the report. Converge makes a profound difference, and that difference stems, I think, in part from its commitment to breaking down barriers in traditional routes into and through education. In so doing, we understand those who undertake Converge programs fundamentally not as service users or as patients, but as students. And like all students at York St John, Converge students bring their valued experiences, their insights, their perspectives to bear on a wide range of subjects and academic disciplines. They're part of our wide and deep academic community. As well as studying a variety of subjects, Converge also has a choir, communitas, a theatre company, out of character, and a research group, the Converge Evaluation and Research Team. I've just mentioned the importance of partnership between University and NHS Foundation Trust, but partnership is also central to the success of the student experience in Converge. Converge students work alongside other university students in a mutually beneficial partnership. As well as gaining knowledge, skill, understanding, our students grow in confidence, in self-esteem, and in the skills of self-care. Many progress onto a degree or another opportunity that would have been maybe not impossible, but certainly unlikely without Converge. That approach challenges preconceptions and stereotypes of mental ill health and of higher education. As you'll hear in much more detail today, it offers an innovative model of genuine reciprocity, of community engagement, and of knowledge exchange. So it's a really creative model of being a community of learners, and it's a model that we think can be used across many other universities and healthcare bodies. The evaluation report was made possible by funding, so I need to give some credit where it's due to the Office for Students and to Research England. The report and today's event allows us to continue our reflections and our planning to enable the growth of Converge as a model of best practice. Before we get going with the conference programme itself, though, I want to thank all of those involved in the creation of the report. Don't do it now, but at some point turn to page 12 of the report and you will see a long list of excellent people to thank. But I do want to thank in particular two people before we get started. Firstly, to Professor Nick Rowe for his imagination, his commitment and creativity in leading Converge. And second, to Dr. Harriet Barratt, the Senior Research Associate who led the evaluation project team with such insight, enthusiasm, and professionalism. The report we're discussing today is the result of 2 years of exceptional work, so thank you both. So I hope you enjoyed today. It's going to be a stimulating and interesting day for us all. And with that, I will very happily hand over to Professor Nick Rowe.
Thank you very much, Richard. That's very kind of you. Beautifully expressed. Do you want to have a seat?
I got that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Richard. So nicely summarised the way that Converge works. I'm very grateful to him for kicking that off. I'm not sure Harriet gave herself enough introduction. So just in case anybody knows, Harriet has been the person who's held this 2-year evaluation together with her team, a great team that you've got. So we will have more time to mention this, Harriet, but let's be very clear that we would not be here without you and the work that you've done with your team. So thank you for that. Well, Converge began in 2008 with some very simple principles, which Emma and I worked out in the autumn of 2007. And they were that people would come to the university to do, in the first instance, a course in theatre. And our students, university students, would be involved in the teaching of that course. And that people would come as students. They wouldn't come for drama therapy or for some therapeutic intervention, but just come purely to learn about theatre in a theatre space and learn what the skills of theatre and to be theatre people. Out of that, of course, has grown the wonderful Out of Character Theatre Company, and we'll see their work this afternoon. But also out of that and that principle grew the whole of Converge. So when it started, those were where I began. Simple ideas which continue and haven't really changed, nicely expressed by one Converge participant who said, students, not service users, courses, not therapy, and I might add, university, not clinic. That's where we began, that's where we are now, and that's where we'll continue. That's non-negotiable. If we're talking about the future of Converge, those are key principles. But they needed testing out, of course, and that's when Harriet started. That was the key thing that I wanted to happen, is to test out those key principles that have animated us for 13 or 14 years, is what are people thinking about that? Have I been living in a kind of fantasy world, really an imaginative world academics do, you know, they live in these strange worlds, or has this got bearing in the real world? And while you read the report, make your own mind up, but I've been very grateful for you for addressing that, Harriet, over these years. So, today, and the way we want to run today is to invite you to respond to the research, to respond to the evaluation. We didn't want a kind of thing where we just present to you how great Converge is, telling you about the research, but we wanted a kind of response. And I want to just concentrate for a moment on that word, response. So I've been doing something called playback theatre for over a quarter of a century, and playback theatre is a form of theatre in which the actors respond spontaneously to stories told to them by members of the audience. So that's what you have to do as a playback performer. You listen very carefully to what you hear and then you perform it back again. That's playback theatre, and that's the response. And there's a certain characteristics about this response that we expect today, I think. The first is that it is partial in the two meanings of the word partial. It is partial because it's not the whole story. Your response, the responses that we're going to hear from others, is not the whole story, it's part of the story. All your responses to Converge and the findings is part of your story. So it's partial in that sense, but it's partial in the other use of the word, which is it expresses the responders' interests, their wishes, their desires, and so on, and that's part of it. So today, when you hear about Converge, what do you think? What's the most important thing for you? That's what we're interested in today. We want you to engage in that dialogue. So why respond? Why the response idea? It is because it extends Converge beyond the narrowness of this organisation at Newcastle and in York. It expands it beyond that. Begin to think about the implications for what this research is telling us about working in mental health and about the function of universities in the future. What's it telling us about that? So it expands us out of the inward-looking word of Converge. But secondly, it should challenge us. So we're open to challenges, and the research does challenge. When you've read it, you'll see that certain things that we've not got right and that we need to improve on, and you would expect that. So we need challenging, otherwise we will, we'll turn inwards and we'll fade, I think, if we're not challenged. But the other thing about this response is that you're going to see today is that it's going to be unexpected at certain points, surprising. We've no idea what the two speakers first off we can say. It's going to be surprising, unexpected, maybe quite amusing at certain points. It's going to be perhaps even puzzling or and challenging, because we're inviting responses not just from words, but we've had a response from an artist whose lovely work you can see in the atrium, from a musician, Ewan, whose music will end the day, at a character theatre company, they made a film together in response to the data. So we're going to get different types of responses that align to the way people wish to speak about the world. And each of those will contribute to, this is our aim anyway, to the debate, to the dialogue about Converge and its future and what Converge might look like in the future. So, be part of this dialogue with us, join us in it, and thank you very much. Holly's got this role she didn't want to have, which is the whole little, its timing's up, and that's 3 minutes, but I'm virtually finished. So, great, thanks Holly. I'm making extra time. We're going to have 2 more minutes than we want, so that's great. So I'm going to finish, but just to say, please discuss with us, enter into this debate about Converge and the future, and its future going forward. So thank you very much, and I think I'll hand back to Harriet. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you. And yes, hello everyone. As I didn't do earlier, just to say properly, I'm Harriet. I think I know a lot of you, but not all of you, so hopefully I'll get to chat to lots more of you throughout the day. And again, I would also just like to thank as well our brilliant team. I can't see where everyone's sat, but Holly, Ruth Knight, Ruth Lamley, Holly Gowan, Robert Bennett as well. As Richard said, in fact, we have a long list of people to thank, but not least our brilliant storytellers. You'll hear more about them later on. Some of them are here today. And also CERT, which is the Converge Evaluation and Research Team. So a real team effort, and it's lovely to see the culmination of all this work together. So I'm going to talk just briefly about the idea of knowledge exchange. So I think this can be quite an off-putting phrase, to be honest, for something which can be really quite special and meaningful. And in a way, too, it builds on this idea of responding to one another, which Nick has talked about, and with one another, rather than just this sort of idea of exchanging some kind of unit of knowledge. And one of the key points we want to propose across the whole day today is that Converge offers a different way of thinking about how knowledge and skills are shared between different people through these responses and through these relationships. So first of all, just to put you all on the spot, as we mentioned, we have an interactive question for you, which you can take part in if you have a smartphone, namely, what do you understand by the term knowledge exchange? So I'm going to just bring up a different slide from a website which has a code on it. If anyone's already there, the code is 29202780. But have a think about this question while I get the screen up, and then we'll give you a minute or so just to answer, and then we can see what people are thinking. Bear with me. Yes, no problem. It should now be on screen as well. So 29202780. And we should start to see answers appearing on the screen, fingers crossed. There we go. So yeah, learning already coming through strongly, of course. Different perspectives, something beautiful and empowering, sharing information, everyone contributing, mutual learning, sharing expertise, sharing skills someone might otherwise not learn. I think that one just disappearing, sharing of different lived experiences. So a real emphasis here on learning, on difference, but on that relation as well, that relationship and response. Parity of esteem, yeah, that's a really important one for Converge and research within Converge as well. Hopefully that will come through today. Fantastic. Okay, thank you everyone for humouring us on that. So the official definition of knowledge exchange, again, bear with me, I'll just switch back to our slides. Thank you. So the official definition of knowledge exchange is that it is the collaborative, creative endeavour that translates knowledge and research into impact in society and the economy. It is a set of activities, processes and skills that enable close collaboration between universities and partner organisations to deliver commercial, environmental, cultural and place-based benefits, opportunities for students and increased prosperity. So you can see immediately that this concept rests on three main assumptions. First, that knowledge is based within universities. Second, that it is most usefully directed into organisations. And thirdly, that the priorities are for this research and academic knowledge to support national aims across the economy, culture and the world of work. So please bear this definition in mind as we propose a slightly different model. First, I'm going to just very briefly run through our findings around the knowledge and skills that are exchanged between the different groups who access Converge. Maybe the issue is that I should point at the computer, not at the screen. For a start, just to say briefly, we understood, by the word skill, we understood this to mean both personal skills, so confidence, empathy, communication, as well as professional skills like how to facilitate a group, or subject-specific skills. But there's also this third category, which you can see down here, which spans both personal and professional, things like collaboration and inclusivity. So you can see much more detail on this in our full report, which is on the Converge website. So what's in your packs is just the summary. And then, as seen in this bottom table as well, the development of self-confidence by both university students and Converge students was identified by all the groups we spoke to as the number one skill or characteristic, maybe, gained or regained through taking part in Converge, so confidence came out really strongly. So, for example, 93% of past university volunteers reported they either agree or strongly agree that engaging with Converge improved their confidence. And these skills, in turn, supported people to progress in lots of different ways, which came out in the research. So you can see here university student volunteers went on to work with Converge or talked about it in job interviews or in applications for other university courses and perceived a direct link between their time with Converge and their success in those areas. Meanwhile, many Converge students also talked about their time with Converge leading directly to work within Converge, but also to volunteering, to higher education, or to their own creative practice. But what else was exchanged? So I think so far, maybe so expected. They're great findings, we're really pleased, but what else was exchanged? What is different about Converge? We increasingly found that the benefits of Converge students and university students working together goes far beyond this relatively straightforward exchange of skills and knowledge. So I want to give you three brief examples here. So both university students and Converge students learn from each other in a really profound way, particularly in terms of meeting people from all different walks or stages of life. So this first quote is from a university student who told us, "They experience us and we experience them. We, as in university students, I think learn more from Converge students, if anything. You meet so many people from so many different places in life, different stages in life. They really teach us how to survive, I think, sometimes." And this exchange of outlooks, in turn, can help to remove the stigma from preconceived ideas around mental health. So one Converge student saying, "I met a couple of university students who I think, retrospectively, were a tiny bit nervous of meeting people with mental ill health. being concerned about what people would be like. But it was just lovely. And then finally as well, something we hadn't necessarily foreseen was that, many university students said that being part of delivering Converge courses actually changed how they viewed their own learning. So this university student said, just enjoy doing it. I think that's one thing the Converge students definitely taught me, was just be here and enjoy it. So the Converge model, hopefully, as you can see, enables a slightly different type of knowledge exchange that is two-way. It's not just from the university outwards. And central to how this works within Converge, we found through our data, is its welcoming environment and supportive community. And this is based on mutual understanding, respect, collaboration. And it's these relationships that help develop interpersonal and professional skills for both university students and Converge students and support their next steps, whatever they are. So in summary, while university students and Converge students do swap skills and knowledge, which our funders obviously were looking for and will be very pleased to hear, the most valued form of exchange and growth from all the people we spoke to centres on attitudes to, acceptance of, and connection with people from other walks of life. And we're proposing today that this model removes barriers and therefore provides those vital conditions for the exchange of knowledge as it's more commonly understood. So just briefly coming back to that official definition then, we can see that where the official definition sees knowledge as being based in universities, Converge recognises that everyone has different forms of knowledge, skills and backgrounds that are of equal value. Converge sees knowledge circulating between people and communities, not only between organisations, although that is also important. It helps to grow personal skills, relationships, creativity, well-being and individual development, not just professional progression and national priorities around, for example, the economy. And crucially, Converge supports the exchange of attitudes, outlooks and mindsets, as well as knowledge and skills. So I'll just finish up this section by referencing a few recommendations made by our evaluation based directly on these findings. So we do recommend that Converge raises awareness of this different understanding of knowledge exchange and how Converge offers this model. So especially in relation to that exchange of attitudes, as it can be of real value, we believe, across all kinds of settings. So we recommend raising this awareness across the board with internal and external university funders. So anyone here who's in university management, this idea of the knowledge exchange framework, which is the funding mechanism for this kind of work, really important to keep alternative models of that idea of exchange really active in the minds of funders, but also within the NHS and community partners and with policy bodies as well. So really just trying to expand the sense of what knowledge exchange is and could be on a national level using Converge as a case study. We also think it's important that if new Converge programmes are developed in the future, we think it's absolutely vital to actively think about creating the right environment for these different types of exchange and relationship to happen. And that will obviously depend on the specific context in which that programme takes place. So we know that, for example, Converge in York and Newcastle have a lot in common, but also very different contexts, and that's absolutely right. And then finally, Converge can proactively help both university students and Converge students to understand the options open to them after their time with Converge, including pointing out that personal progression is just as important as professional progression. So that's been quite a whip through. I would recommend anyone who's especially invested in this area, please do look at our full report on the Converge website. There's a meaty section on this. But I hope that gives you a sense of why we think Converge presents quite a different model of what this idea of knowledge exchange within and outside of a university can be. So, as Nick spoke about, the whole point of this conference today is to hear from a wide range of people in response to these findings. So I'm now going to hand over to our two guest speakers for this section. I'll introduce both of them now. So first up, we have Professor Matthew Johnson, who is Professor of Politics at Northumbria University. And then he'll be followed by Michael Cunliffe, who is Artistic Coordinator at North Tyneside Art Studio. So a very Newcastle strong contingent. Thank you, all of you, again, for listening and participating as well. There will be more of that later. And over to you, Matthew.
Thanks very much, Harriet. I think that the first thing just to say really in respect of the work that's been done is that this is actually really difficult work. And I can imagine a large number of, well, the vast majority of academics would have shied away from developing such an ambitious programme of engagement and such an ambitious programme of evaluation. It's really difficult. And taking co-production seriously like this is not just important for reasons I'll touch on. It's incredibly complicated, incredibly time-consuming, and isn't done enough. And it's not done enough because of a range of professional considerations that make it just not feasible. So I just think we really ought to regard the Converge team's work as being extraordinary in the professional context. So it's brilliant. Now, I want to talk about the need of these kinds of programs in Converge in particular, and the value of it with regard to two aspects of the research that I conduct. So the first aspect is the relationship between financial insecurity and health, mental health in particular. And what we do is we look at the relationship between financial security, income, and health along these large longitudinal data sets. So we go back to 2008 and we look at levels of self-reported anxiety and depression, and we follow the population through right the way up to 2020. And we find, back in 2008, just at the back end of the finance crisis, historically high levels of self-reported anxiety and depression. The unweighted sample is about 33%. And what you find with each political intervention from then on, 2010, 2015, 2016, 2017 and 19, and right the way up to the beginning of the pandemic, that levels of anxiety and depression, particularly within 16 to 24-year-olds, increase to a ridiculous level. So in 2020, a good weighted estimate is that a third of 16 to 24-year-olds had clinical levels of anxiety and depression. With the cost of living crisis, we anticipate that to be much higher. I couldn't speculate on it, but if 4 out of 5 households are going to be in fuel poverty by January, the levels of anxiety and depression in this country will be way beyond any pandemic we've previously experienced. And it's not enough just to say, well, God, it's just anxiety and depression, just get over it. Too many people think that it's necessarily qualitatively distinct from physical health problems. Lots of ways it isn't. It's just as debilitating. And the levels of anxiety and depression in this country are a national disgrace, and they're totally avoidable. We could deal with these problems through increasing people's financial security. We could introduce schemes like universal basic income, these sorts of financial interventions. But in the absence of a government committed to that kind of necessary intervention, programs like Converge become incredibly important. They become incredibly important precisely because they destigmatize the health problems that people face. They give people access to people from beyond their own immediate social sphere. They create avenues of access to the sorts of interests that people would like to engage in were they to have the financial resources to do so. This is an incredibly important project and one that needs to be commended. So we've got this health need for it. That's fantastic. Genuinely needed. Unnecessarily needed, but genuinely needed. So the second point is about the value of this historically. So in universities today, people talk about outreach in a very marketized and instrumental sense. They talk about outreach as being a means of increasing recruitment to undergraduate or postgraduate degrees to increase revenue for universities. And increasingly what we see is that there's just a grave disparity between elite universities and post-92 universities in particular in the way in which that outreach is conducted. Elite universities, Oxbridge-type universities. Go out to people and say, look, we've got these set of ideas, these subject-specific sets of ideas that we explore through undergraduate study. They're really interesting, and they're intrinsically important. And what post-92 universities tend to do is to go out to people and say, look, do you like money? Well, if you like money, this is the best means you've got available to make more money. And the problem with that is that it's just not true. And I've got family members who've taken undergraduate degrees that have reduced their labour market value. Had they just done an apprenticeship, they would already be earning, and they would be earning more than they are now, having gone away with an undergraduate degree. What used to happen in the past, and what my family members benefited from, in the 80s and 90s, was that there was a much more holistic, subject-specific focus on outreach. And that meant that there were programs of education available, independent of undergraduate and postgraduate study, that anybody could sign up for. So my granddad, who was illiterate until my grandmother taught him to write in the 50s, wanted to learn German because he met some prisoners of war when he was fighting in the war. And he wanted to be able to speak German with them. So he went on to take an adult education course through Newcastle University. And that opened his life up to other people who were interested in the same sort of things, could speak with his mates. And his overall well-being improved, not least because he got out of the house where my grandma was all the time. Yeah, terrifying woman. Frightening. So his life markedly improved by virtue of universities thinking, God, subject-specific ideas are really important. People who haven't gone through traditional routes into education, higher education, can benefit from them. We need to provide these resources. And the incredible thing that Converge does is it takes that spirit of intrinsic value of subject-specific ideas in the arts in the main, and it says, look, these are of value to people if people are interested in them, and provides pathways into that. And that's incredibly important, and we don't do enough of that. So I think there's an unnecessary need for this sort of work, but it's an urgent need, and the value attendant to the work that's being done here is significant and ought to be recognised. So I'm very grateful for having been asked to respond to the report, and I think the key responses are, it's incredibly comprehensive, it's of great need, and it's incredibly valuable. So, thank you.
Right, well, thank you very much. If I am correct, so I can press this button over here. Hey, here we go. So that's me. I really want to start by saying thank you to everyone here for inviting me along, because to a certain extent I feel like the slightly odd duck in the room. My name's Michael Cunliffe. I'm the Arts for Mental Health Manager at North Tyneside Art Studio. But I'm an artist, so that is the background that I bring here. I'm an artist with experience of poor mental health. Now, I don't have a research background. I did do one of those courses that Matthew mentioned to lower my labour market value. But it has enriched my life significantly. So I think that ties in very well. And what we do at North Tyneside Art Studio is we specifically use art to support people's mental health. And we've been doing that for 30 years. Long before it came to the attention of the health service, the government, we and charities like us were working on that principle that being creative is good for you. And I'll be honest, that was about the be-all and end-all of it. Because when I speak to institutions, when I speak to the health service, I speak to doctors, they need a bit of convincing that it's good to learn, that it's good to experiment, that it's good to be creative. If I talk to artists, they just get it. They don't necessarily practice it, because I'm sure we all know some mentally not so well artists, but the point is, we get it. So there's significant overlap between the work that's happening in Converge, which is fantastic, and the work that we do. And I'm just really grateful that we've got an artist's voice in the room. Sounds a little bit grander myself, but I've read a lot of reports written by doctors, written by academics, that have no reference to the actual process that's taking place. So, like the Converge environment, North Tyneside Art Studio is a space that provides a relaxed, non-pressured environment, okay? We don't have timelines, we don't have deadlines. People come to us for as long as they need to. A lot of Art for Mental Health projects that are being set up are time limited. They are 6 weeks long, they are 12 weeks long. And as I note in the Converge report, they have rejected wellbeing measures. They use wellbeing measures. And we don't do that. We're not a 6-week course for drawing for people with suicidal tendencies. We are not a printmaking course for people with anxiety. So this is an example of some of the work that our members have created over the years, and it includes a piece by a Converge student there, which was exhibited in the Baltic. Now, it's great to show things like that because it's kind of like, yeah, you know, you can go places, you can do things. But that's not our focus. Our focus is on what the impact of being creative, of being in that environment, is on mental health. So we used WEMWebs, we used wellbeing measures for a long time. As I say, lots of places use it. But because we don't work with people for a short period of time, we were able to study it over years. And what you can see here are wellbeing measures from 3 longer-term members of the studio. And these are people with severe and ongoing mental health issues. And what doesn't get talked about enough in these projects is the complexity of mental health. So Matthew mentioned financial instability or insecurity, insecure housing, potential of homelessness, domestic abuse, episodic nature of mental health means that well-being fluctuates, mental health fluctuates. And if you look at the blue line, member A, first to second measure, that was their kind of first introduction to the studio, and about 3 to 6 months later. And that is what we expect to see if we use wellbeing measures. You come in, you find something new, you get excited by it, you meet new people, you feel better. If you stop working with them then, and you don't talk to them later on, you have improved their life. Off they toddle. But if you keep working with them, their well-being goes up and down. So I often say to people, if you want to use well-being measures, the best thing you can do is work for people for 6 weeks, kick them out, wait for them to hit crisis again, work with them again. Right? You want a fundable model that people out there are going to say, yeah, this is the cure. That's what you got to do. Not improve people's lives, just keep nudging them along a bit. So, we don't do that. We look long term, and what we try to do is create ongoing long-term impact, because what art in particular does is inspire people. It pulls that thread, it gets you thinking about the world in a different way, and it's why hearing about the theatre company that sprung out of Converge is so important, because that is that long-term impact. That is people coming to a course, getting inspired and thinking, right, this is what I'm going to do next. So I was particularly interested in the fourth finding, as reported, that Converge demonstrates the exchange of attitudes, outlooks and mindsets is a crucial and non-traditional form of knowledge exchange. Because I immediately wondered, whose traditions? And that got me thinking about the dynamics of the Converge and uni student setup and what's actually taking place. So on the left, we have what I think of as a traditional knowledge exchange, you might think of. Teacher, I know stuff, students, you listen. And when we look at the report and we talk about reciprocity and this environment, university students and teaching staff are giving knowledge, and Converge students are giving something back as well. However, to me, it still feels slightly hierarchic. It might just be the nature of the report being written by an institution. That's just the way you look at the world. But a non-hierarchic shared knowledge exchange is our tradition at Studio. It's a collaborative working environment. So when we run courses and projects, it looks a little bit more like this. Okay? Everyone brings something to the table, everyone is teaching something. Now, whether that's the very simple fact that someone who's been there an extra week knows where the paintbrushes are and can tell someone who's new, or whether it's that somebody has come along and has experienced similar issues to another person and can support them, there is this constant exchange of information and growth. Now, from my perspective, as someone looking for improvement in mental health, the dynamics should look like this. This should be what creates that improvement in mental health. Because although there is an element of pride, and everyone who's done a Converge course should be so proud of doing that, because I know some days just getting up and getting somewhere on time is a huge deal. Thank you. This is what's really going on, and you have all enriched each other's lives. So, if we look at from page 48 of the report, and we saw this earlier, it was interesting to me that the personal skills were split off from this diagram, and we had personal skills categorised by type: Converge student, uni student, institution. Because when I look at education, arts as mental health improvement, everyone is learning those personal skills: the risk-taking, the self-discovery, understanding the impact of learning on mental health, their self-worth, their confidence. That is central to everyone. And rather than thinking of people kind of categorised by their origin, I wanted to think about them in terms of their role dynamics. So, generally speaking, you have people who are teaching, you have people who are leading or facilitating, and you have people who are participating in a workshop or a taught session. And as I say, with that traditional hierarchy, you have the teachers, they're giving out the information, you have the leaders, you know, people who kind of push conversation, who perhaps have the confidence to step forward, or who are assisting that formal learning model. And then you have the participants, the people who are absorbing that knowledge and learning and working together. If instead we look at this in a collaborative model, the kind of model we are used to, everyone kind of takes turns in that model. So there are benefits to teaching, of course there are, and something that's identified in the report, and particularly when we look at perhaps what is being sold, if you want to use that terminology, to Converge students and uni students. For university students, it's about those career skills developments, what you're going to do after your course, how does this fit into your education. For Converge students, it's going to be more about participate, try something new, didn't you want to do something different? Don't just go to appointments, you know, fill your life with these other things. But by having these roles overlapping and splitting out what those benefits are, you can see that actually the benefits of teaching a group, of leading a group and participating in a group are distinct but don't need to be barriered. There is no reason a Converge student couldn't lead or teach formally in a more structured way another group of students. So that is my main takeaway from this, is that we at North Tyneside Arts Studio are looking for mental health improvement, and we're looking for mental health improvement long term. I would like to think that the university students who come in could progress in a similar way to Converge students. We talk about independent use of art or education perhaps to support mental health. The sort of things that Matthew was talking about there with his grandfather, that idea that actually learning is its own good, that it improves your life, that moving away from a consumption model where you're sitting waiting for the next TV show, or you're scrolling Facebook, or you're buying whatever it is the wider world is selling, to actually what do I want to learn, what do I want to do next, is really, really vital for the rest of your life. Okay? So we talk about the 3 E's. It's our model. We have one of those types of CEOs. But yeah, for the people we work with, the kind of Converge students, people with mental health issues, it's about engaging with art and discovering it has a positive impact, then enabling them to do that independently, and then supporting and empowering them to choose where to go next. For university students, if I'm working with fine art students, and we've done some placements, they've already got the art skills. We don't need to teach them that. They know what they're doing, but they don't necessarily know how it supports their mental health. They sit and they learn and they do what they're told, and they've got course structures that they have to follow, and they've got boxes they've got to tick. So if we can show them that different path, that way that actually art can just benefit them, as we've seen in those quotes, can we enable them to integrate that into their life, into whatever they want to do next, and perhaps get them to use it for post-graduation mental health practice to help support them. And that's the kind of thing that they can really learn from people with lived experience. So I know I've gone over the limit. I do apologise. I'm a full-on rambler. But for me, that's what really excites me about Converge, that opportunity to open up that interaction, that potential for lifelong impact. Now, how this collaborative working that works so well in the arts, because, hey, we'll experiment, we'll try different things, translates to the likes of geography, I couldn't say, but I think it's an interesting challenge. So, thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Michael and Matthew. It's really great to just have different perspectives on what we've been talking about, so I'm really grateful. We don't, in this session, have time to open up to the audience, but please keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the day. We're now going into some breakout sessions, which I just wanted to explain slightly, because they're potentially slightly complex. However, I'm confident we will all find our way through them. We really wanted people to feel they could make their own sort of, I suppose, journey through the day in a way that made sense to them. We didn't want to feel that people had to listen to all of the different themes in order as maybe a more kind of conventional conference. So what we've got is 5 different activities. Each one is repeated 3 times, which might sound a bit silly, but it will be a different group in each of those 3 repeats. It will be a different audience in the room. So 3 of these 5 activities are from our themes from our report. And what I'm going to do in just a moment is ask each of the theme leaders to give us a little wave, if that's all right. So maybe a warning on the lighting as well, if that's okay. Those 3 themes are listed in your programme, in your pack. The 4th one is an arts session, a guided arts session, for anyone who just wants to do something slightly different. The 5th one is a walk to our peace garden. So again, just a chance to get some fresh air. Do you remember as well, there is also that room 7, if anyone just wants to go and have a little sit down and a coffee. So what I will do now, if it's all right, is ask the 3 main thematic leaders to give us a wave. Thank you for the lighting. So if you look towards the main exit there, so on the left, far left, we have Holly Gowan. Hi, Holly. Thanks. Who is leading our session on identity, language and environment. So quite a broad-ranging session, but looking especially at those aspects of the Converge model and how that relates to how other organisations, like the NHS, for example, might think about identity. So a broad-ranging discussion on those kind of similarities and differences. In the middle, we have Ruth Lamley, who is our search coordinator, so leads our group of researchers with lived experience of mental health challenges. So Ruth, very appropriately, is going to lead a session on collaboration and co-production. And then finally, Ruth Knight, on the right, is leading a session on health and well-being. And just a note on the breakout room numbers. In this building, the first number of the 3 numbered rooms always refers to the floor. So if, for example, you have room 019, that's room 19 on the ground floor. 112 would be room well, 112, but on the first floor and so on. So hopefully that helps you navigate as well. So what I would suggest, we don't have a break yet, we do in half an hour. If you choose which of the 5 different activities you want to do, you can follow our thematic session leads. But as I say, please do take advantage as well of the arts session and the Peace Garden walk as well, if you prefer something more relaxed. And as I say, those sessions will be repeated 3 times, so you won't miss out depending on what you choose. I hope that's all clear, and thank you so much again. We will see you shortly. Thank you.